So generally speaking, when I'm practicing, I like to think that, if I only have an hour, for instance, if I only have, which, probably at this point in time with the amount that I'm working right now, fortunately, good day I get an hour on electric, hour on acoustic. So I have to think, what am I doing to maximize that time? So I like to deal with the instrument, get the hands out of the way, go ears straight to hands, take the brain out of it.
Okay.
This should be covered. So I really like to do piano hand-in exercises. They're little 1 to 2 measure cells. The piano players will do in octaves, and they'll go up and down all of their the whole range of the instrument. So in the lockdown, I would do 1 through 20, and the first exercise is this. So far and so forth. You go up diatonically,
Right.
you go back down. And so I would do that in every key for all 20, and I would do it at 25 BPM. And in my mind, the click is beat 4 of every 4th measure. So I'm using the metronome not to feed me the time, but to force me to develop my own sense of internal time.
Right.
It's giving you a click just often enough to let you know if you're on.
It's a reference point.
Exactly, it's
Right.
a reference. Because if I'm doing it with the metronome here, it's not forcing me to develop my time. It's feeding me the time.
Right.
Which I don't think, as bass players, I don't think that's beneficial. Because I think a lot of people, they get caught up in the idea of locking with the drummer, and they think that means you play off the drummer. But what that's going to turn into is you're going to be a nanosecond behind everything.
Right.
Like, your time, you need to be able to align with the sense of time with the drummer and play within that so that you're moving together. I think that to me, I think is conceptually a little bit more about what I like. So there's that, and then playing along with records. I think that...
Tried and true.
Tried and true. You want to play bass? Play with the greats.
Right. Right.
Make it feel good. And play at a volume. This is something that Greg Hutchinson talks about, the great drummer. He would always talk about for drummers playing along to records. Turn them records down. Don't blast them. Don't blast on drums, or in our situation, don't blast on bass. Like, you want to find the balance where you're playing, but you're almost sitting in it. You don't want to be so over it that you're listening to yourself more than the band. Because you're playing with those records to hear what they're doing.
Right, right.
Not what you're doing. So I think that's really important.
That's a great
also.
point.
Yeah. I think that's of critical importance, and then those piano hand-ins are really helpful. But yeah, and I'll come up with like little exercises. Like, for instance, so it's all, these 2 fingers are always a challenge. You know? And you kind of, there's the constant risk of overtraining them just because they're going to be naturally weaker than your other fingers. So, but every now and then I had a period where I would do this sort of a thing just to start the day. Just something very simple, but
Some chromatic exercise.
yeah, just something like, if there's something that happens on a gig where I think like, okay, like I found a little bit of like or not a weak spot, but something that isn't as available to me as I would like it to be, then I'll see if I can target that and create an exercise. I think creative practicing is really important because it also deepens your relationship with your instrument.
Right.
So I think trying to think of a good example. I remember feeling like I didn't really have like line vocabulary. Like, whenever I was really starting to go out and I was playing with Cam and Mike, and like I'm thinking like, well, I need to be able to solo. Like, for this gig, this is one of the few gigs where like being a good soloist is a requirement.
Right.
And so I was thinking like, well, I'm working on the hands, but if you're not practicing improvising, the plant that gets watered is the one that grows. So if I'm not
Right.
working on the thing, it's not going to grow. So same method as you use with anything else. If you want to do something fast, do it slow. So would take the iReal book and put on a set of changes or whatever and set it super, super slow to where my head would always be in front of my hands. Like, I wanted to practice making the decision of like a cascade of 8 notes, something like that.
Right.
So I think like, okay, if we're playing like Joy Spring or something, then, we'll think, okay, F major. G minor. C7. F major. Or whatever, like just something to where I'm always going to be making the choice of what note to play.
Right.
I never want the hands to get in front of my mind. Because then, at that point, it's a different kind of improvising, but the point is to practice like the weak area, which is, well, if we get going to a certain tempo, then I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'll have like, you know, little things at a time. But it never felt like a longer idea. It didn't
Right.
feel very horn player like, which, as you know, essentially a Patitucci disciple, he's one of my teachers. If you listen to him play, he's a total train guy, total Coltrane guy.
Right.
A lot of his stuff from there, and that was his influence on me. Is he would always say, "Well, you want to play like that? You listen to Train, Shed
Right.
Train,
Go to the source. Right.
Go to the source." And so that was a big thing for me. I think that, you know, just sort of like the overarching theme there is that if you can identify what you want to work on, figure out ways to target that. And doing that on your own kind of increases your level of connection with the instrument. Not to say that you shouldn't have a teacher. We should all have teachers. Like I have a teacher. I have a guy that I study classically with who I
Right.
love. And
That's to this day.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I mean that's like one of the things that I always take away from Arturo. Like guys in his 70s, he has a private teacher.
Wow.
Like Arturo still takes lessons.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Well, because for him, I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest trumpet players ever. And he's still like, yeah, there's like some sound stuff I'm trying to work on still. It's super cool to see. And he would always talk about that like, you're never done. You're always working.
Right.
There's always another thing to work on.
No one can know it all.
Yeah. And this is kind of goofy, but especially in terms of like developing these ideas and exercises and self-analyzation yourself. It's kind of like in a Return of the Jedi, whenever Luke turns himself into Darth Vader to try and like convince him to come back to the light side of the Force.
Right.
And in Darth Vader, he takes Luke's lightsaber and he opens it and he says, "I see you've built your own lightsaber. Your training is complete."
Right.
There's a little bit of that in play where I think it's important for your relationship with the instrument that you find your way. You know?
Right.
And again, we all need teachers, no matter who we are or how bad we are or how old we are. There's always use for having a good teacher. But I think it goes really well hand in hand with working on your own sort of problem-solving skills
Right.
with the thing, you know?
Because what I like about these instruments also, these basses are very truthful,
Oh, yes.
and yeah, they will tell
Oh,
on
yeah.
you.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been playing about 40 years, something like that. And I got my bass. My bass kind of taunts me.
Yep. Uh-huh.
It's like you don't have this on your fingers yet, do you?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it just makes you
Yeah.
highlights your faults and it makes you want to go at them.
Yeah.
It makes you want to be a better player. That's what a great instrument does for you, I think.
You know, that's this is a joke that Arturo likes to tell, and he said that I forget who he said. It was either Dizzy or Roy Eldridge or somebody like that, or I think maybe Dizzy told him that Roy Eldridge told him this. He said he would go on the gig and he'd say, "Man, I think the trumpet's gonna win tonight." But you know, tomorrow I'm gonna
Right.
have a chance to break even, and then the next day you die, and the trumpet wins for good. And there's some truth in
There's
that.
truth to
You
that.
know that the journey with these instruments are exploring an artistic craft in general. The journey is not linear.
No.
You know, and as obnoxious as that can be, because I'll have a few weeks or a few months where maybe I'll have a few gigs back to back where I'll walk away like, man, like this is weird. I'm not really playing like that. I'm just kind of in a rut. And then maybe out of nowhere you have a gig where you walk away like, okay, that was pretty good.
Right.
And then you have another one in the rut. It's like, well, it's just,
Yeah.
it's
You win some, you lose some.
you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
It's a non-linear pursuit, and the only thing keeping us here, because any person with a brain on them would be like, well, this is a recipe for insanity, but it's just the love for the music and the
Yeah.
love for the craft and the commitment to the thing, it's can't quit it. And even if I could, wouldn't want to.
Wouldn't want to. Right. Wow. Now, speaking about practice for a minute, is there anything specific you do for your right hand?
The right hand is tricky because I know I have some friends and they like to do some exercises for that. I had a friend who would actually just straight up with the metronome
Yeah.
would just set it and try and go up and just try and drill the movement. For me, I forget who it was that told me this. Somebody told me this, and I really like it, that it's not necessarily about one hand being faster than the other as much as it is about your hands being coordinated.
Right.
If this hand is at 22.1 miles an hour and this hand is at 22.11, it's not coordinated.
It's a problem. Yeah.
And it might not make that much of a problem, but eventually that phase is gonna cause a problem.
Right.
Know? So that's my big thing. That's why I like those hand-in exercises, is because it forces the coordination of your hands. And those exercises, there's a variety of different ones that target different things. So, for instance, there's one. So if I'm thinking about a right hand, I'm doing. So I'm having to do a string skip. I'm having to stay on one.
Right.
If you think about the various motions that you have, there's you have your raking. There's 1 2 1 2, alternating.
Right.
There's only a few like actual motions that you have in your right hand. So again, we're talking about the idea of getting the most out of your time with the instrument, because unless you're in conservatory and your life and job is to shed,
right.
If you're like the rest of us, bill-paying adults,
right.
There's stuff to do. So that's why I like those exercises so much. So if I think about it, and I'm really focusing on my right hand, the goal here, I'm thinking, is how do I get the best sound possible? And that could be anywhere on the neck. You can do it here. And depending on where you start, there's different considerations. If I'm starting here, got to be a little further back. Just,
right.
Right. And so if I'm down here, it's counterintuitive. You think, but I actually like to keep it a little bit further back. Mm-hmm. So instead of, depending on what you're going for, but if we're talking about clarity, there's all those little things that I feel like those exercises are really good for. I feel like they're somewhat of a multivitamin, if you will. But yeah, aside from that, I mean, that's about as much as I have on the right hand. I slapped for 1 year in high school. Never got very good at it, and fortunately, nobody has asked me to do it, because that would be my last day on that gig. And then as far as palm muting goes, I think that there's a lot of value to that and just that sound.
Yeah.
So I think with stuff like that, the best thing is just records. Try and cop that, and there's ways that you can practice that. Like for instance, if you want to. Again, we're targeting an idea. So if I'm palm muting, so what I just did, the thing that felt the most weak was going back and forth between thumb and index on one string.
Right.
That was a little sloppy. Okay, so how do I target that? Well, work on one string for one. So how do I make an exercise for myself? Maybe I do the chromatic thing in the left hand where I was doing. Maybe I do something like this. Set it to a metronome. Just get used to the feeling of it. It's clear, but it's not even.
Right.
It's a little bit more even, but I lost the sound.
Right.
So those sort of things, those considerations, those really sometimes harsh self-analysis. There's no room to BS yourself in the shed. Like that's the real growth to be made there is find the thing you're not good at, figure out why you're not good at it,
right.
Attack that, find the least common denominator of the problem. That's always a thing. And so much of that, I feel like a lot of that with the right hand, it honestly comes down to the left hand. Because, you're looking at all this stuff, like, well, what is all this? What is this fretboard geometry?
Right.
Really, I feel like if you take care of the left hand, the right will take care of itself.
Right,
truly.
right.
So like a lot of cats, like I had a student recently said, I want to play, lines like you, and I want to play some of this stuff. And I said, okay, give me like a C major 7 arpeggio, lowest note you have available on the neck to the highest and back down. And he kind of looked at the thing, looked at it like he was trying to find a set of keys or something. Said, okay, we found the first problem.
Right.
Because no matter what your dexterity is, no matter how fast your fingers move, if you don't know where your left hand's going, then you're not going anywhere.
Right.
So then, then I think about that. So C major 7, lowest note I have to the highest and back down. So lowest note would be the B, the major 7. So. So I like going down a different way than I went up.
I noticed that,
yeah, exploring different ways of going about it. And so maybe sometimes I go up like that. Maybe I go straight up in this position, then I just go up the C string. Like, the more ways you know this fretboard, the better off you're going to be in every way. So that's one thing I used to do is, for my practice routine, is I would do those hand exercises. Every key, the first 20, metronome at 25 BPM, that's beat 4 of every 4th measure. I would do that. I would do the same metronome thing with that sort of arpeggio exercise, but I would do major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, diminished and augmented for every key.
Okay.
That felt, if I know this, if I don't have to think about this,
right.
Then everything else will be better. It's sort of the same principle that a really great classical teacher will implement on the acoustic bass. And it's even more critical there because you got no set pitch.
Right.
Like that awareness of the fingerboard is a non-negotiable. If you don't have that, and even now, like if I'm trying to, like, let's say I'm improvising and I have an idea that I don't really hear in my head before I play it, it's not going to be in tune.
Right.
Because I don't hear it yet. I don't know which little subtle micro adjustments to make to adjust the temperament to being correct against whatever chord. So those principles are universal across all instruments, I think.
Wow. Yeah, you really did, come at this from a very high level.
I'm trying. I like to think that, actually, I'm going to put the metronome on just as an example. I like to think, they always talk about practice makes perfect. And I like to think that perfect practice makes progress.
I like that.
And we don't seek, one thing my mom always tells me, we don't seek perfection, we seek progress. Because if you're looking for perfection, then I got a bridge to sell you.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Even like the baddest cats, like, you can go talk to whoever you want. You go talk to Hadrian Farad, Thundercat, Stanley. You could have talked to Jocko back in the day. The greats, they'd all tell you, like, oh yeah, man, I'm struggling with this thing, or I'm trying to figure this thing out. Like,
yeah. There
is no perfection. There is no you're done. Like, I know this for a fact. John Patitucci still sheds hours a day. Like, I know this for a fact. Like, I remember asking him, like, I'm looking for something to transcribe, and he's like, yeah, maybe do this Coltrane thing. I just did Countdown a little while ago. Like, guys in his 60s.
Wow.
Transcribing Countdown. Because he's still going after it.
Right.
So, like, that's, the bar for pursuing the craft is high. There's a reason that these cats are the great players that they are. It doesn't come from, an hour of noodling a day.
Luck or knowing somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You guys deliver the goods.
Yep. And so here's kind of what I'm talking about with the metronome. So you go Pro Metronome app, and you take it down to 25 BPM. A better way to visualize this is you can change the thing here to where, like, you can see the beats and remove them, but essentially in my mind I'm thinking 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. And really focusing on the sound. And then doubling up.
Wow.
So you get your hands together quickly, and it takes time. And I mean, it's hard. It's really hard at first, but it doesn't take that much every day to put into your routine. Like, you do that for 30 minutes, and within a month, you'll notice a big difference in how you're able to get around the instrument and the sound you're able to achieve. Chops without definition kind of, it's like steak fat.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's there, it's lovely, but what is it really
What's
do
it
for
good
you?
for? Yeah. Right. Well, you really eye-opening.
Cheers.
Eye-opening. Thank you so much, Max.
Thank you.
All right.
you.